fast upside his head. Dahmer's dead, Dahmer's dead. A broomstick fast upside his head. Upside his head, upside his head. Bloody broomstick, Dahmer is dead. Am I supposed to feel outrage? Am I supposed to feel sorrow? Except for Dahmer has no right to tomorrow. Dahmer's dead, Dahmer's dead. A broomstick fast upside his head.
Dahmer's dead, Dahmer's dead. Bloody broomstick, Dahmer's dead. The broomstick, Dahmer's dead. Long live the broomstick. Dahmer is dead. Classic tune from my fellow Wisconsinites, the Violent Femmes. Am I supposed to feel sorrow? That's the question. Goddamn, man. Isn't it something to be alive at this moment? At a certain point, you can talk hell world all you want, but man, there's something about living now. Obviously, if you don't have the boot of capital directly on your neck, if you're privileged enough to be in that position, there's something vertiginously giddy about this whole thing. Motherfuckers. They all got it. They all got it. They all gave it to each other to prove a point. To prove a point about how it wasn't a big deal. That's the best part. Like, we've talked about, Alex Perrine wrote a great article about how, you know, the rubes are in charge now, and like there used to be a divide between the hoopleheads and the leadership of the Republican Party. You know, there was stuff that you told people, but you didn't actually care. You know, it was to rile them up. And now, and more importantly, I think even in that process is just the panopticon of online. Like, you cannot be seen in masks. You cannot be seen to look like you actually care about COVID, because to do so is to undermine your argument. And then you got the fact that for a lot of these people, like, it is reality. It is reality. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, these are not just things they tell people to keep the vote tally up. They really believe it. And now they all have it. They all give it to each other. And when do they do it? At their little witches coven with Amy Kobe Bryant. Their little end zone dance on the fucking on the Supreme Court. They all ended up giving it to each other. Oh man, I don't think any of them are gonna die though. As funny as it is to imagine, especially like the idea of him dying like a week before the election. I mean, people said that about RBG. How funny would it be if she died 2 months before the election? How funny would it be if Trump died of corona a month before the election? Once again, how funny would it be if Biden, the sleepwalking geriatric, got that nomination over like 20 strivers? How funny would it be if Trump beat Hillary? The funniest answer has been the most predictive one. And I think that's not just being facile, it's because what is comedy? Like, comedy is surprise. Comedy is something defying expectation. And we live in a moment when all expectations are being annihilated by the accelerating crisis and the lack of our political institution and media institution, their fundamental lack of flexibility in dealing with it. Their incapability of dealing with it. Which means that what we get is the funniest outcome. Long live the broomstick. I don't know where the hell those birds are, but they are getting really loud lately. They have not been this loud before. Is it the time of year? Do they know that the super volcano is about to erupt or something? Is this like the beginning of the core, when all the birds, like geolocators, get messed up by the failure of the Earth's core to create an electromagnetic field and they just start smashing into things? It would be funny if he has to debate Biden from a hospital bed. That'd be very humorous. Like, on Zoom. Oh man, are you saying the audio's choppy? Because the thing is, I went with the plug-in to the computer because people said it actually was better. And specifically, they said it was louder, which I know has been a consistent criticism. So I wanted to do this because I think it might work. But if it's choppy, I'll go back to the lav mic. Should you vote for Kanye in Oklahoma? I mean, if you think it'd be funny. I mean, why? It's not my choice. You're the one doing it. I mean, Kanye to me is a little played out at this point. I mean, I'm not voting for Biden, but I don't vote for Kanye or Howie Hawkins for that matter. If I'm gonna just do something to amuse myself, it's gonna be to amuse myself, you know. And Kanye is not music to me at this point. He's a little played out. So I don't know yet. Might write in Bernie just as like a bit of sentimentality. I think maybe the funniest thing you could do is write in Hillary Clinton, which I might do. That might be the funniest thing you could do is write in Hillary Clinton. I'm still with her, folks. I will always be with her. Also, yeah, voting for everything except president, like they did in Michigan in the tens of thousands, which helped kill Hillary's chances of the presidency. That's another strong move. I want to say one thing is that there's already been some argument about like, all right, say Trump dies soon, hilarious, and then presumably it would be up to the RNC and who that they would like be the candidate, and I think they would probably just pick Pence for continuity reasons. And the question is like, does that help the Republicans or hurt them? And I've seen some people argue that it helps them because it might get those suburban Republicans who hate Trump back in the fold. But I think that number would be dwarfed by the number of Trump warriors who would just be broken by it and would not vote for Pence, wouldn't vote at all. More likely to show up at the polls with like an AR-15 and get suicide by copped. It would be funny though if the Q people insist he's not dead and he becomes like the false Dimitri or something. Just like he's like the occluded Mahdi of American politics, and they just keep waiting for Trump to come back. I do think that if he dies, they should give him a Viking funeral in one of the beautiful boats. Get him out into one of those shitty lakes that all those people like to tool around in all Saturday and just... have Don Jr. Don Jr. tries to do it, and he fucks up like 15 times like Edmer Tully. He can't get the thing. And then Eric tries it, and he can't do it either. And then Ivanka comes in, like the Blackfish, one shot. Some people say he's not sick. I don't believe that because, I mean, frankly, that seems like Q stuff to me. Oh, he doesn't really have it. It's all a ruse. It goes against his narrative is the big thing I have a problem with that. Like, okay, sure, what? It means he doesn't have to do a debate, maybe, or it gets people to have sympathy for him, but it undercuts the whole argument he's made, which is that it isn't a big deal. How is it not a big deal if the entire White House has it? And I guess they're thinking like, well, if this old fuck gets it and doesn't die, then people will think it isn't a big deal either. But, I mean, at this point, it's so close to the election that his health is going to be in doubt on election day no matter what. Like, he's not going to be over it. Are you fucking kidding me? And also, they're not keeping that secret. Come on. They're not keeping that secret. Thinking that they're going to keep that secret is like thinking that they're executing John Legend and Chrissy Teigen in Guantanamo Bay and replacing them with clones. Come on. But the tweets are going to be great. I can't wait to see the tweets of him in quarantine, just watching even more TV than he usually does, not being able to go to the rallies. fact that everyone has it, though, is so funny. Mike Lee's got it, which means there's probably a couple other senators that have it. This could honestly be the one thing that stops them from getting Amy Joseph Kony on the Supreme Court, which would be, of course, hilarious. I mean, those senators must be terrified because they're old as shit. Although, of course, Rand Paul had it earlier in the year, and he didn't give it to anybody who died. Virginia Fox, that awful Gorgon from I think South Carolina, she didn't die either, because God delights in human evil. And when I say God, I mean, of course, Yalboeth, the motherfucking demiurge. He loves them, and he's going to keep them alive. He's going to protect his archons. He'll protect his archons. He's got their back. Folks, I had the corona and I'm fine. In fact, I have more powers. I can smell time now. I can smell it. I can smell the time. You ask me what time it is, I smell. And I know. That's thanks to corona. I do wonder if he's going to take hydrochloroquine, because he kind of suggested that he was taking it a few months ago, but of course you can never tell what's real and what's carnival barkery. I realized, looking through my notes from the Comey rule that we watched and talked about on the last episode, that I forgot to say one thing about the show, which is there's a scene where he's talking to Comey, where Brendan Gleeson is doing his Irish Trump, like, top of the morning to you, I'm Donald Trump. I'm here to talk to you about being president. And he goes, and he's talking about how he doesn't listen to experts or political people. He talks to TV people, because TV people actually have stakes in their jobs. If they don't get ratings, they lose, and so they have to be right. Now, of course, that's very easy to undermine and point out the absurdity of, because no, they don't have to be right, they just have to be entertaining. But that shows that Trump understood American politics better than anybody at the time, and why he won more than anything is that he understood that being entertaining is being right. It's the same fucking thing now. Entertaining is correctness. It's because eyeballs are all that matters. Which, honestly, is why I think this could hurt him badly, because in the last episode, Felix was suggesting that Trump might win if he can just use the next month to maximize, like, do what he did in the debate every day, in terms of just getting everyone so disgusted and exhausted that instead of voting to turn the volume down, they just stop voting. They just stay home, and then the rabid rump of Trump supporters is enough to just sneak them over the finish line, thanks to, of course, voter suppression and outright fraud and all the stuff that we know they're going to do one way or the other. And I think this really hurts his chance to do that. He's in quarantine for 2 weeks now. I mean, what's he going to do? I did not predict this on Twitter, by the way. Somebody made a fake tweet about me that was very funny, but no, that did not happen. I did not say he was going to do that. I did predict, though, talking about the debate, that he would condemn Biden for being racist due to writing the crime bill, and say that all cops hate him because he is a puppet of Antifa and BLM in the same answer. And he did it. He did it in the same fucking answer. Which is just so mwah, and more than anything reminds you that these people are not operating off of premises or political motivation, political ideology. They just have a few lumps of Facebook lard in their brain that they're shuffling around at any given moment and then barfing up, which is why he's beloved, because that's true of everyone who likes him. They don't have political ideas. They have a Facebook feed that provides them with something to tell people about what they're mad about on a day-by-day basis, but none of it connects to each other. None of it coheres into a whole. None of it has any coherency to speak of. It's all isolated. The only people who are threading things together, of course, are the Q people. But they're doing it at a level of like esoteric analysis that is beyond even talking points. It's pulling things out of the talking points. Those birds are losing it up there. Wow. They're really nuts. Ah! If they are ravens and they're quoting Nevermore, I'm gonna be pissed. If they interrupt me when I go back inside here and I'm poring over my quaint and curious volumes of forgotten lore, I am going to be mega pissed. I'm going to come out here like Betty Draper with a fucking BB gun. No, I'm not. They're fine. Love all animals. What the hell is anarcho-communism? I always get mad. People always yell at me when I talk about anarchism, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. Just to say that it's a way for people to think that they're good guys. It's a way to be like, I want all the good stuff without any of the bad stuff. And since it's all at the level of labels, it doesn't really matter. What matters is like how you are operating off of those labels. Because one thing I know from like dealing even in the minimal way that I have with like the micro sects and emerging tendencies within the self-conscious left in this country, which is to say political cosplayers, myself included, there's no real coherence there anymore as there is the people like Trump and Facebook grandparents. Like, there are MLs, like people who I've seen call themselves, in DSA, for example, like call themselves Marxist-Leninists, who demand like regional autonomy for like their DSA chapter from a national. That's the exact opposite of Leninism as it applies to party structure. Like Leninism means democratic centralism, which is like something like PSL has, where there is a line that is enforced after a vote. Once the vote is taken, the line is enforced. And you've got people who call themselves Marxist-Leninists saying, no, I want my chapter to be able to do whatever it wants. Well, that's not what it's just because the words have resonance. The words mean things emotionally. And then they want to apply those regardless of what it means to their actual lives. And that's not a huge deal as long as it doesn't obscure your ability to see what's happening in front of you, because I really don't think any of those labels mean anything when the nut cutting time comes, when people have to get offline and engage with their, hate to use the word, but community. Oh shit, they're saying he's gonna get experimental treatment? That's so funny. That's very funny. I mean, I don't know if that means hydrochloroquine. It would surely be funny if he took that oleander extract that the My Pillow guy is flogging, which is apparently actually deadly. I gotta say though, if he bounces back in 2 weeks and he's fine, I kind of think that's the most likely scenario, because he shouldn't be alive now. Fuck COVID. He shouldn't be alive. Period. He should not be alive. What actuarial table tells you that a man who is the exact shape of a Frigidaire refrigerator and eats nothing but gristle for 3 meals a day should be alive at the age of 74? So maybe he is impervious. Maybe he's like Keith Richards. Of course, if he is felled by quack medicine, he will not be the first president to be killed by quack medicine. I think we've talked about it on the stream before, but George Washington, father of our country, was killed by a doctor whose only treatment for whatever the hell he had. I'm not sure. I don't know if anyone knows what he had, but it was one of those classic went out and rode in the rain and came home and got ill, type of situations, pneumonia or something. He just bled him. He's just like, he's still sick. Got to get more blood out of there. And he literally just Dracula'd the father of our country to death. And then, of course, there's Garfield, who was killed by his quack doctor friend, who insisted on sticking unsanitized fingers into the bullet hole, and then, most damagingly of all, refused to allow him to be fed orally, but instead rectally, which caused him to, over the course of his attempted convalescence, to lose like 60 pounds, which made it much harder for him to fight off the infection, which could have been defeated if they had just sewn him up after the gunshot, because the bullet didn't hit anything vital. It got lodged like in the broad muscles of his lower back. I'm trying to think of who else. I'm trying to think if anybody else died hilariously among presidents. I mean, Nelson Rockefeller, who was the unelected VP for Ford, he died pretty funny. He died having sex with his mistress. William Henry Harrison, famously said to have died because he gave a speech in the rain and got pneumonia. That's possible, but my opinion is that he died for the same reason that Zachary Taylor died and James Polk right after his term ended, which is during the 1840s, there was, behind the White House, about a couple hundred yards, maybe not even that far, a giant sewage lagoon, a huge open-air pit of human feces, which most likely gave cholera to one or three of those guys. They say Zachary Taylor died from milk and cherries. There was also a theory for a long time that he was poisoned by the slave power to stop him from resisting allowing slavery into the Western territories claimed in the Mexican War, but he was most likely killed by the poop water as well. In fact, Zachary Taylor, I think it's a while ago now. I think it's like 20 years ago. He was disinterred because they wanted to test his body for arsenic, because arsenic lasts very long in the human body, and you can actually do tests for it in hair. You don't even have to do an autopsy. So they dug him up and they cut some hair loose, but they didn't find any arsenic. Coolidge just had a heart attack, I thought, while shaving, I believe. Shaving, just dropped dead. Presidents don't die like they used to. They don't die at all. They live forever. Fucking Jimmy Carter's 96 now. He has had a brain tumor for 5 years. Herbert Hoover also lived into his 90s. And of course, Ronald Reagan, Bush. These guys, they have all the adrenochrome. Like they've literally taken everyone else's animal spirit into themselves and allowed them to live forever, because they don't suffer the same health risks that the rest of us do, because they pile up our labor to keep them alive. I mean, somebody will die prematurely at some point, but I don't know. I wouldn't want to bet on which one it is. Sure, not going to be Obama. You know, he's got the best adrenochrome possible. He'll be 150. Have you read about the bloody Baron Unger Sternberg in the Russian Civil War? I have. In fact, I highly recommend the book, The Bloody White Baron, about him, because that is an insane story. So during the Russian Civil War, you might know this or not, you know, there was the basic geography is that the Bolsheviks held roughly the center of the Russian Empire's territory, and then around the edges were a number of rebel armies under different commands, which is the big reason that the Bolsheviks won against such long odds, and against, you know, the combined attempted intervention of the Allies from World War I, is that they held the middle area, which means that they had internal lines of defense and stuff, and they could coordinate in a way that the white armies just couldn't. And there was one white army under like an old Prussian aristocrat named Baron Ungers von Sternberg, who had a ragtag army in Mongolia, where he essentially declared himself like a reincarnated Buddha, and had like kind of a weird quasi-mystic Buddhist cannibal army in the Mongolian hinterland before he was finally defeated by the Bolsheviks and executed. There's a very interesting moment there, because after he was caught, he was brought to a nearby city and displayed for the town. Like, they put him on a stage, and people came and watched him and like asked him questions about what he had done, and he defended himself before they I think hanged him. But he was a complete psycho, and yeah, he thought he was a god on earth. It was very much a Colonel Kurtz situation, and he had his guys massacring civilians and deserters, and he made deals with like local like Buddhist Mongolian religious leaders to like co-rule with him. Interesting, very interesting story. And there's a detail from that book that I think is one of the most chilling things I've ever encountered, which is that when one of the Romanovs, one of the girls, while she was in captivity, and they found out later, she had written while she was in her cell, wherever. She had like a journal, and she was drawing swastikas. She just was drawing. She had drawn a bunch of swastikas. This is like 1918, because you know the Nazi Party did it. It emerged from an esoteric tradition among specifically among European aristocracy, which Sternberg was representing, which the Romanovs were part of, which ended up in Germany finding expression in the Thule Society, which was a group of esoteric, cultic, wealthy Germans who backed the Nazis in the early era. So I recommend that book. It's short, it's well written, and there's lots of good gory details. They're saying he has a high fever. Oh, fuck. Oh, boy. That's not good. God, if he does die. Oh, my God. If he dies before the election. God damn. I mean, if he died before the election, how could we handle that? Like, this man has been the single focus of the emotional energy of, what, I'd say 50 million Americans, something like that, either against him or for him. Like, he has been the star that their psychic worlds have revolved around. And we have all, even if we don't have that much emotional investment in him as a person, we've all been living in his brain for the last 4 years. And if he just was, oh yeah, he's gone now. Before this election, there's supposed to be this titanic contest that might turn into a civil war, according to everybody who's secretly jacking off under their fucking chairs. For that to just be like, yeah, no, it's over. One of the greatest anticlimaxes of all time. One of the great cock blockings, honestly. Just an entire nation with blue balls. I'm trying to think. There's a book or a movie or something that's got like one of those just hilariously anticlimactic endings. I'm trying to think of what it is. The closest thing we have to esoteric rightism in this country now, and if you saw that Feels Good Man documentary and the interview with the magician guy, it's probably like 4chan. It's probably forums. It's probably reactionary forums full of those like incel child molesters who just have so much time on their hands that they can collectively concentrate their will on creating memes that they charge with dark power and then put out into the world. I would say that more than Q, just because Q it's less self-conscious, I think. Like, these people think they're doing normal politics is the thing. For now, I think that's going to change as Q gets more intense and more baroque. But for now, it's like they're normal. They think they're normal still. They think they're normal. Is Q Christian? It's not only Christian, but it is largely Christian. Its earliest proponents are definitely evangelicals. It still is, like, I'd say fundamentally evangelical, and I would say also, and I talked about this with Sean on History is a Weapon that just came out, where we talk about Q, that the New Age people who are now part of Q are essentially secular evangelicals, the way that Scientologists are, you know? Like, everyone's essentially an evangelical in this country because at least everyone who is pursuing the American dream self-consciously is an evangelical, because the American dream is the dream of everyone being God, which is, of course, why Mormons are the ideal Americans and the ones who have done the best at synthesizing a way of life out of American capitalism, because they were the first ones to twitch onto what America really meant. And they went out west where there was still land. They grabbed some, even though it was shit. And by virtue of the fact that they sublimated capitalism into their social fabric, they were able to prevent the deracination that happened to everybody else. But you know, everyone is seeking that. They're the only ones who have it as a theological principle. But everyone is seeking godhood on earth. And it's why we are consuming the world, because the American dream is that the access to material excess that used to be the province of gods on earth, kings, emperors, satraps, potentates, is now for everybody. Everybody can have that. and like the idea of a social good is consumption. Well, there's a math. It's not hard math problem to show why that's not sustainable, and that's why we need a new religious framework, a new spiritual and value framework that de-emphasizes material, not in the interest of austerity for everybody, like, oh, you know, like the way Carter did. Hey, you guys should stop being so materialistic and save some energy. It's like, well, motherfucker, how about you create a world where that's even possible? You know, it's about changing the social inputs in such a way that that living is possible. Living in the absence of striving for material gain is possible. Well, it says abundance for everybody, but abundance in what, you know? Like, abundance, if it's abundance in hamburgers, if it's abundance in fucking high fructose corn syrup, if it's abundance in McMansions, that's not a viable social model. Like, abundance has to be defined socially. Like, everyone should have an abundant access to the what is best in life. But what that is can't be determined by the market, because the market's answer will always be consumption. What is best in life? Chilling with the homies, I think. No, what is best in life, sure as shit, is not crushing your enemies and seeing them driven before you. That might be good in Hyperborea, but we understand ourselves as part of a fucking human species. Someone wants to know what books to recommend on John Brown. Obviously, if you want to read a novel, which has a lot, like it has a lot of, like if you want to know like what happened in terms of just bare facts, there's a lot of accuracy that's very well researched. Cloud Splitter, but there's also a kind of considered a pretty authoritative biography from David Reynolds called John Brown, Abolitionist, the man who killed slavery, sparked the Civil War, and seeded civil rights. What's the Progressive International? Is this a replacement of the fake, pathetic Socialist International? Because honestly, I feel like that's going backwards in the terminology. Progressive is one of my least favorite words on earth. There was a brief period when I was all heady with the concept of Bernie winning, and if not bringing about social democracy, at least changing the game. And I'm imagining a world where, in the future, you know, that battle has been fought. And I always thought it'd be fun to write a book in that position about Elizabeth Warren called The Last Progressive. Just the idea of Warren at that, I mean, if Bernie had won, of course, if Warren representing sort of the last gasp of the progressive tradition in America. But sadly, that did not happen. Don't like that word. Is that something from Yanis Varoufakis? Because I think that his analysis, his analysis of the situation, and his insistence that we need to think in terms of building institutions that transcend national boundaries is very, very true. Like, I think this idea that I understand the argument, and I agree with it, that in the current moment, national political institutions are the only ones that people can have any effect on, really, and so that's where people have to focus their energy. But I think there has to be an eye at all times on the necessity to transcend that, because international cooperation is going to be the only way that we mitigate the worst of the crisis we're in. But he doesn't seem to really have a very, at least, successful project going on. I know that his election, his party or whatever in EU is doing very poorly. I like Nietzsche. Someone asked what's my thoughts on Nietzsche. I'm a fan. Gets a bum rap. It's mostly thanks to his awful Nazi sister. No, he didn't kill God. We killed God. He just noticed. I don't think he was a reactionary, and yeah, he didn't like socialism because he was repelled by any kind of any project that sublimated like the individual like that, and yeah, because he was a romantic. But like there's still useful stuff there. You can't just like reject or embrace things. Somebody's asking about like the idea of like using nationalism and patriotism to sell socialism. I think at this point, I think we should see that there is no future in branding. That what we're branding is too hegemonically capitalist to accommodate a alternative within it that could genuinely challenge it. Because like when people talk about like Bernie wasn't like patriotic enough, or he didn't like salute the troops enough or whatever, that all feels like people picking that shit out of Pepper, because that was not the he did not run on like America, the United Snakes. He ran on boilerplate. America is a great country and it deserves a great system and all that stuff. There was no way to add to that was going to change the fundamental dynamic, which is that somebody in that field is going to be pitching themselves to a specific group of people, i.e. voters, and those voters are going to be taking their cues, if they're Democrats specifically, from a media apparatus and from a party that is just fundamentally incapable of assimilating that level of government intervention into our blessed neoliberal market system. And there's no way around that. And I think people thinking of ways to buff it up and throw some cool tires onto it and turn it into a fucking SUV with a big American flag or something. None of that is going to change the fundamental issue, which is that what alienates people from Bernie, among the people who needed him not to be alienated by, are two things. One, if you are a voter, if you're a Democratic voter, you are taking your cues from the Democratic Party and from the media apparatus. which means that it's a non-starter. There's not enough American flag kissing he could do. And secondly, the second group are not paying attention. So they don't fucking notice if he's wearing a flag pin. They don't care if he's wearing a fucking trucker hat. They're not paying attention. And that is the problem. And if they're not paying attention to politics, I don't think they really are humping the symbols of patriotism in such a way that they are like just waiting to be activated by the right incantation. And also, like, all that patriotic stuff, like, that's all coded already. Like, you can't pry that stuff away from its context. Like, when people talk about patriotism, they're not just using it as a broad concept. It's connected to other specific sub-concepts that are antithetical to a socialist project. Prying it off is not the easy task that people think it is. And I think it's because of that, it's more fruitful to look lower. To look to more basic stuff than to branding campaigns. The Democrats will go QAnon over time. As I've said, everyone who is politically minded will go QAnon over time because things are going to keep getting worse. Politics is going to continue not intersecting with actual conditions, and that means that you're either going to have to stop paying attention, which a lot of people are going to do, and just check out from it. But the ones who keep paying attention on all sides of the aisle are going to have to get more and more intensely esoteric with their parsing of symbols in order to invest the whole pageant with any meaning. Because, like, Q started with from a very simple crisis point. Like, we talked about how, it's the difference between the America they find themselves in and the America that they have in their head. But more specifically, it happened because Trump was to them the guy who was going to make America great again. He was going to fix the problems. He was going to get rid of the sickos. He was going to, more than anything, be their avenging angel against the people who they blame. Because resentment is the engine of politics at this point, on all sides. And then he got in there and he didn't do it. Nobody went to jail. Hillary, for one thing. Like, lock her up was the essential, like, forget Great America Great Again. Lock her up was as important, if not more so, a slogan of 2016 Trump campaign. And did he lock her up? No. In fact, at one point, he even admitted that he wasn't going to lock her up in front of a bunch of hooting chuds after he got elected. He says to him, that was good for the campaign. That was fun. But, yeah. Like, he was just telling these people, you actually fucking thought we were going to throw Hillary Clinton in jail? I don't fucking care. And so that was what they had to square. Trump's supposed to be putting these people in jail. He's supposed to be cleaning out the swamp, and yet everything's the same. It's because it's happening behind the scenes. Well, Democrats do that too, like with Obama, with all the 11th dimensional chess stuff, and like Queen Pelosi, how she's got a trick up her sleeve. That's only going to get more and more intense. Like, Biden gets in there and does nothing about the crisis, which is probably going to happen. Democrats are going to go get Q-brain too, even more so, to try to parse. Now, because Q exists and is coded as Trumpian, Republican, and reactionary, it will look differently. It'll self-consciously be different because they will have this example that they're not going to want to be like. But in content, in terms of its motivation and the engagement between politics and their world, like the way that they are approaching it, not as a actual exercise of power that is happening in public and that you're observing, but as a secret coded veil that you have to pierce. They gave Regeneron to Trump. They're not giving him hydrochloroquine? What the fuck? Regeneron. That sounds like a drug in like a RoboCop remake. Like some sort of rich person stem cell thing that gives you a tail and laser vision or something. If they gave him energon cubes, we're fucked. If Donald Trump turns into a Decepticon, I don't think it matters how many Proud Boys show up at the polling places in November. Oh, Regeneron is the company. Okay. That's also sounds creepy. That's like a company in a RoboCop movie. Regeneron is a subsidiary of OCP. What if Melania dies and Trump doesn't? Wouldn't that be funny? Melania dies of the COVID and he survives. Or Don Jr. dies of it and he doesn't. I think Harris would beat Pence if it came to that. Every Trump dies except Barron, and then he becomes the false Dimitri, who emerges to lead their nation through its time of troubles. The bloody white Baron von Baron Trump. He's huge. He's absurdly huge, and he is a virgin Chad. He is the synthesis. That dork one time said that Trump was going to complete the cycle of German idealism. He didn't know that it was Barron, not Donald, because you see him. He's this giant man, and yet he does the virgin walk. Shit, that's true. Somebody says this election's between a German Catholic and a German Protestant. It's 30 years war all over again. Fuck. I have read about the 30 Years' War. It's pretty intense. Honestly, kind of crazy how little effect it has on popular culture, considering how hair-raisingly, monstrously violent it was. The number of people who died in Germany was absolutely catastrophic. I'm trying to find the death toll, but I think they estimate like a quarter of the German population or something like that died during the war. Entire regions completely despoiled. Swedish armies marching like fucking locusts across the countryside and just destroying towns and castles and villages. Yeah, the Swedish army itself destroyed 1/3 of all towns in Germany. Over 1,500. Sweden! Gustavus Adolphus. The most interesting players in this 30 Years' War were, of course, the French, because France was a Catholic power of Europe, but it fought with the Protestant League against the Catholics because the Catholics were led by the Habsburgs, and the Habsburgs were considered a greater threat to the Bourbons than any potato-eating fucking scandos and squareheads. In fact, it was a Catholic cardinal, Cardinal Richelieu himself, who, or not Richelieu, a different guy, who advised France to get into that war on behalf of the Protestants. Which, of course, means it was not just a religious conflict. It was good old-fashioned power politics, which is always what it ends up being. People forget that people, of course, forget that Sweden was a world power in Europe in the 16th and 17th century and 18th century. They actually had a North American colony. Delaware and parts of New Jersey were called New Sweden until Peter Stuyvesant and the Dutch kicked them out. And then after Charles the 12th just got their asses kicked against the Russians, they just said, "We'll just do furniture from now on. No more wars for us." Who killed Palm? Gladio, broadly. South Africans probably specifically, but like that whole spider network. Palm was a thorn in the side of the anti-communist international that was, by the 80s, going ham in South Africa, in Latin America, Operation Condor, but also genocides in Central America, Italy, of course, Belgium, and he was... It wasn't hard to kill him, that's for sure. You say killing a leader of a country is a bit over the top, though, but I mean, if the latest revelations are right, the guy who pulled the trigger was some crank, because cranks are great if you have an intelligence operation, because even if they get caught, they're too dysfunctional to have like live connections to anything. And also, when you look at how easy it was to kill him, the dude had no bodyguards, was leaving a movie theater with his wife, and then the guy who shot him, even though he was maybe just this crank, got away with it and never got caught. He's dead now. I actually don't know if the business plot is real. I don't know how real the business plot was. I believe that Smedley Butler had these conversations, but I don't know if it went even beyond that. But it definitely indicates that, you know, even though FDR was the savior of capitalism in many ways, that the capitalists were not all on the same page as to whether they wanted to be saved. Which is the value of government, which is the value of democracy in a capitalist system, is that it not only does it provide popular legitimacy to legitimize all the exploitation and horror of it, but it also allows for the coordination of behavior that individual actors within it are never going to sign off on because it hurts their bottom line. I just want to end, and on that note of like what's realistic for capitalists to do, I want to say that I just rewatched for a first time in a number of years Michael Clayton, which I think is getting... people are talking about it more and more these days, and a movie that came out in that great year, the last great movie year in American film, 2007. There Will Be Blood, No Country for Old Men, Zodiac, Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, And Michael Clayton, that's just off the top of my head. There's more that I'm not even remembering. And I think now Clayton might be the best one of those, honestly. Just because it is, in my mind, just the perfect legal thriller. It does everything that it could do with the material that is made up of it. The performances are amazing. Tom Wilkinson obviously is fantastic, but Clooney has never been better in that movie. He does so much stuff with his face. So he's just like, he's this twitchy mask that's always looking like it's gonna pop open. Really good stuff. But if you haven't seen the movie, spoiler alert, I'm gonna stop after this so you can log off if you want to go watch it. And I highly recommend going and watching it. So if you don't want a spoiler, drop off now, because I'll just be wrapping up here after I finish saying this. So the plot of the movie is that Tom Wilkinson is this big shot lawyer with his firm that's defending an agribusiness giant against a lawsuit from a bunch of farmers in Wisconsin that they they sold them a fertilizer that gave them all cancer. And it's been going on for years. But in the middle of a deposition, Tom Wilkinson has a psychotic break and freaks out, and the firm brings in George Clooney, who's the fixer. He doesn't do litigation. He just smooths over shit for people, which is something that the capitalist system needs. Those lubricants, a guy to patch over the rough spots and do the things that are not within the realm of the law necessarily. And they bring him in because he's a friend with him to talk him down. But at one point, eventually, the head of the internal legal team for the agricultural company, played by Tilda Swinton, hires these dudes to kill Tom Wilkinson. And then later, George Clooney, after it looks like he's getting too close to the case. And she's working on behalf of the CEO of the company, who's played by he was Ed Truck in The Office. Also on 30 Rock, he was Hank Hooper. And I think what's really well observed about it is that, and I remember at the time when it came out, Ross Douthat complained that it was unrealistic because a corporation wouldn't just have someone killed. It wouldn't just have people killed because it's a corporation. They have zillions of dollars. Like, even if they lose this lawsuit, and the big thing hinges on the fact that the litigator, the Tom Wilkinson character, has a document that's like a absolute smoking gun that these guys knew the drug killed people, knew the fertilizer killed people, and didn't do anything about it. Like the stuff that means you're dead, you're fucked. You're gonna have to spend $30 billion on this fucking thing. Is that the order doesn't come from the top guy? The order doesn't come from Hank Hooper, the CEO, because even if this comes out, what's the worst thing that happens? He has to retire 2 years early, right? He has to take his golden parachute a little ahead of time before he goes and golfs. Like, oh, maybe he has to go in front of Congress. Like, he's not going to jail. He'll be fine. The stockholders will take a hit. They'll be pissed at him, but like, there's insurance. It'll all be fine. The person who orders the hit is Tilda Swinton, because for her, the stakes are vastly higher. Because if this goes south, her career is ruined, and she doesn't have the golden parachute. She's just like halfway up the mountain. She doesn't want to get thrown to the bottom. She has the fear of falling, and that is where all of the monstrous extra legal stuff happens. Not at the commanding heights, because the guys at the commanding heights, they're not really at risk of anything. Our system exists to completely protect them from any real consequences of their actions, because like paying a fine with somebody else's money and then like resigning your job is not a real consequence for killing, in this case, like hundreds of people with a fucking fertilizer or pesticide it was rather. It's people in the middle. It's people who want that and aren't there yet and could maybe face real consequences if something happened, because they could go to jail. Those are the people who pull the trigger or order others to pull the trigger, are the ones floating in the middle. And those are the guys who would do something like have Olof Palme assassinated, maybe. Okay, I'm gonna log off here, but first, some Halloween movie recommendations. Good idea. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. You don't even have to have seen the first two because it's totally disconnected, which is hilarious because they wanted to make it into an anthology series after the second one, but then nobody liked it, so they went back to the Michael Myers stuff. Which first two are good. After that, it's like no, they should have stuck with the idea of a anthology. Anthologies are highly underrated, especially horror anthologies. And on that second sequel tip, Exorcist 3. The one directed by the writer of Exorcist, a Wahhabist Catholic, William Peter Blatty, who also made a great movie called The Ninth Configuration. The only two movies he ever directed, and both of them are really good. Fright Night 2? You mean a sequel to the original one with William Ragsdale and Roddy McDowall? I didn't know there was a sequel to that. That was a movie I saw a bunch as a kid. Fright Night 2. Oh no, this is a sequel to the remake. Get out of here. And it doesn't even have the same cast. Get out of here. Let me think of some other ones. Yeah, 3.5 stars. That's good. People Under the Stairs is fun. I like the. You gotta love blunt political allegory. Evil Dead 2, yes, of course. Army of Darkness 2, even though that's not scary. I recently watched Wake in Fright, which is not, I don't think, really a horror movie, except for the scene where they really shoot all those kangaroos, which is pretty gruesome. But I do like to think that it is a horror movie where the premise is, what if you had to hang out with Australians? That's the horror. Oh, and in John Carpenter, on John Carpenter tip, obviously The Thing, but Prince of Darkness, which is underrated, and The Mouth of Madness, which is also underrated. I did see Miracle Mile. That movie is nuts. That's a great nuclear holocaust paranoia movie where Anthony Edwards overhears someone on the phone saying that there's a nuclear missile headed towards Los Angeles in like 4 hours and they have to try to get out of the city in time. Drag Me to Hell is a lot of fun. I gotta say, I haven't really liked a lot of these newfangled horror films. I haven't seen one in a bit that I really, really like. But hopefully something soon. Miracle Mile is the one about the nuclear attack on Los Angeles. That actually would make a nice, in terms of like the time frame, some of the setting, it would actually make a good double feature with Night of the Comet, if anyone's seen that, which is about a couple of valley girls who survive a nuclear attack. Yeah, I'm gonna watch The New Invisible Man soon, before the month is out. Oh shit, there was a Fright Night 2 in 1988 and it's out of print? Fuck. Now I'm very intrigued. Oh yeah, there it is. Tommy Lee Wallace. Roddy McDowall back. Oh man. Oh, it's not available anywhere? Is it streaming anywhere? Okay, I gotta see that because the original Fright Night is a foundational movie for me. The scene when evil turns into a fucking like a wolfman thing after he gets the steak. That's seared in my mind. You're so cool, Brewster. All right, I gotta try to find Fight Night 2. All right, guys, Monster Squad, of course. Bye-bye, folks. Stay frosty. And get well soon. Get well soon, President Trump. LOL. Long live the broomstick.